Good morning, welcome back to the Breakfast Club. So good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for watching the Breakfast Club every day. I am very pleased to see you, and I started the Breakfast Club a while ago as I thought we need ideas on how to thrive, to connect, to grow despite the corona crisis around us. And it kind of evolved and moved on, but there was one topic I was wondering about for the last weeks, and this topic I want to explore with you today, and that is, where is the flow? And maybe you also experience it yourself, that you couldn't really reach that flow moments in your work, in your spare time, in your everyday life. And flow moments where you forget everything around you, where you're so absorbed by doing one activity that you're not thinking about picking up a phone, if you're hungry or not. There's no space for your ego. Am I good at this? Or do I suck? No, you're just very absorbed in what you are doing. There's no space, no time, and you forget everything around you, and you're just quite challenged enough that you want to stick to this activity. And it doesn't really matter what it is, but it's something that makes you very happy. These are the moments that make us truly happy. And I had the feeling that in the corona crisis, there was not much room for flow. Maybe you had the same experience. Maybe you also had your kids at home, and then there's this constant disruption where you can't concentrate for longer than 30 seconds. Or you are now in home office and there's constant phone calls, emails, pings, telephone conferences, and way more disruption than you usually have. Or maybe, what's also really negative for flow is that you might be in a constant worry about how things will develop. And these are just things that make flow almost impossible. And so I was asking myself, what can we do to bring flow back into our lives? What can we actively do ourselves to bring flow back into our lives? And I was mostly inspired by talking to my dad on the phone yesterday, and he said, I was working in the garden for 8 hours. And I was thinking like, hey, you know how to get into the flow, and we can definitely learn from that. So here are things that we can do to bring us back into the flow. So let's first think again about what a flow state actually is. So I already said it, in the flow state, you are not interrupted. So it's very important that you have time for yourself. Or some people also get in flow mode with others, but most people do that on their own. So make sure you are in a group of people or you are on your own for quite a longer period of time. And I hear that at least in also stricter countries, it's at least possible now to have babysitters for kids, even though schools might not be open yet. So take advantage of that. We all need the flow moment. So create space and time where you are uninterrupted. Okay, so that's the first thing. And then also find something what triggers you that you really like doing. So for some people it might be the Excel sheet, for others it might be the garden, for the third it might be just writing, or whatever that is that makes you happy. So no judging. There must be an intrinsic motivation, and there must be something that comes out from you, and nothing is forcing you to do that. You probably heard about Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, this Hungarian American psychologist and researcher who has done a lot of writings on flow. And he also proposes that it has to be what he calls an autotelic activity. So it has to be an activity that is rewarding in itself, or you have to also show an autotelic learning behavior or autotelic personality type in order to have a super flow experience. And with autotelic, he means that there is no external reward. So you're not doing it because you will have a lot of money at the end of the day. You are not doing it because then everybody will love you for your great behavior. You are not doing something to get into the flow for others, but you're just doing it for yourself and just for the pleasure of doing this activity. So it's an autotelic activity. So that is important. And what I said firstly is that you're really not interrupted, and then you have to have a lot of fun doing it, thirdly. And then what is also quite interesting is that of course, it helps when you are not worried about anything or anxious. So maybe now that we kind of got used to the crisis, and then, as a last thing, what is really interesting is that it has to be an activity that is not too boring. So if you do something that you have done 1,000 times and you totally know how it goes and you're bored and it's too easy, flow wouldn't work. But if it's too hard and you might fail or you might get frustrated, it's also not possible. So you have to find something that's just right in between, like challenging enough, but not too challenging to be frustrating, to stay in that flow. So I think with these tricks, it can be possible for us to not just get into the flow by chance, but no, create those flow moments ourselves, consciously create those flow moments ourselves. So what do we need? We need a time, we need an activity that we love, then we are intrinsically motivated to do so. We need no disruption whatsoever. So again, maybe turn your phone off, send your kids away, or just find quiet time to do that. And fourth, we have to have like the right amount between frustration and easiness, and kind of the right amount of challenge to make you stick to it. Okay, so please try that out and try to get yourself into the flow, because flow is something that makes us super happy, and we don't need like external goods to make us happy. We don't need the big house or the big vacation or the big this or that, but try to get yourself into flow state at least once a day. And the more you are in the habit of being in the flow, the easier it will be to reproduce, because then your brain is kind of programmed to being in the flow, and also your day will be programmed to allow those windows for flow. And I would be super happy if you could share in the comments what brings you flow, because that is so individual and so different, and we are all curious to learn from each other. So have a very flowy day and see you tomorrow. Bye bye.